The Vale Concord's medical scanner had processed 11,000 species across 47 star systems. It had never thrown an error before. Species classification conflict. Manual review required. Senior analyst Varek stared at the screen. He stared at it the way one stares at a mathematics proof that ends with the universe being a rectangle. His secondary eyes, the ones he used for reading dense data clusters, had gone fully wide, which in Vale physiology meant he was approximately 3 seconds from a stress molt. He called Lyra over. Lyra was the Concord's xenobiologist, a Thessin with 4 arms and the calm, unimpressed expression of someone who had seen too many strange things to be surprised by new ones. She slid into the seat beside Varek, glanced at the screen, and then glanced at the human on the examination table 15 meters away. The human, Subject 7, catalogued as Homo sapiens, cleared for voluntary medical assessment under the First Contact Cooperative Accords, was eating a nutrition bar and watching something on a small personal device. She had not noticed the error. She had not noticed much of anything since arriving, actually, except to ask if the water dispenser had anything sparkling. Her name, per the intake form, was Jo. Lyra read the error. She read it again. It flagged her as armored, Varek said, which was not necessary because Lyra had eyes and could read, but sometimes stating the impossible thing aloud made it less impossible. It did not help. The scanner had attempted to classify Homo sapiens' skeletal composition and had found itself malfunctioning, or so it believed. The issue was density. The system had 3 categories for skeletal material: structural, like most avian species, hollow for flight; standard, the galactic mean, sufficient for gravity compensation; and reinforced, reserved for creatures that lived in high-crush environments, like the deep ocean vreth, whose bones were effectively living rock. Human bone did not fit standard. It had attempted reinforced. The numbers still didn't fit. So it had created a new field, naturally armored species, and immediately flagged itself for review, because it understood, in whatever approximation of understanding software is capable of, that it had done something extraordinary and was not confident about it. Varek pulled up the breakdown. Calcium phosphate lattice, interwoven with collagen protein strands. Density index, 1.9 on the Vreth scale. The Vreth were built for pressure. They evolved at the bottom of seas that would compress most species' skulls like overripe fruit. Their bones were a geological event. Humans had bones that were 40% of the weight of Vreth. They have no exoskeleton, Lyra said, slowly. No shell. No plating. No. They just have this. Inside them. Yes. Jo finished her nutrition bar, crumpled the wrapper with one hand, and looked up. She caught Varek watching her. She raised the empty wrapper in a small, cheerful gesture that the translation matrix rendered as "I have completed the consumption event. Thank you for the provision." Then she looked back at her device. Varek and Lyra looked back at the data. Pull the impact resistance projections, Lyra said. Varek pulled them. The screen populated. The system had, in its thoroughness, also run a predictive structural integrity model, a standard subroutine that calculated what forces a given skeleton could theoretically absorb before catastrophic failure. It ran the model. The model returned a number. The system flagged the number as an outlier, reran the scan for calibration errors, confirmed there were none, and printed the number again, underlining it this time in the diagnostic color Varek species used to indicate this is not a mistake, but we wish it were. She could walk into a wall, Lyra said, very quietly. At speed, Varek confirmed. At meaningful speed. Yes. They both looked at Jo. Jo had, at some point in the last 30 seconds, taken off one of her shoes and was examining the sole of it with the focused attention of someone conducting field research. She pressed her thumb against it, scraped something off with a fingernail, put the shoe back on. She had done this with her bare hands. The sole of the shoe was a dense polymer composite that Varek knew from the intake materials list was rated for sustained pressure environments. She had treated it like it was interesting, but fundamentally manageable. Lyra opened a secondary window. "I want to check something," she said. She ran the skeletal model against the Concord's injury archive, pulled up impact cases, looked at what happened to species with standard bone density when subjected to a standard gravity impact fall, say, from a height of approximately 2 body lengths. The archive was grimly educational. Most species, fracture probability, 60 to 90%. Some, 100%. She ran the same model for a human. Probability of structural compromise, 12%. She ran it again, thinking she'd entered something wrong. 12%. They just fall, Varric said. He had pulled parallel data while she was running the model. In their sport records, their recreational activities. They fall. They fall from things, and then they. He stopped. They get up, Lyra finished. He pulled a sport archive clip, some kind of ground-based physical competition. A human impacted another human. Both were moving. Both hit the ground with what the kinetic readout assessed as a force that would have hospitalized most Vale for 3 standard rotations. Both were upright again inside 4 seconds. One of them appeared to be laughing. Lyra sat back in her chair with the slow, deliberate movement of someone letting a very large thought settle. They don't know, she said. Varric looked at her. They don't know, she repeated. This isn't a thing they think about. This isn't specialized. They're not warriors. They're not built species. They're just generalists. They evolved this for general use. To survive a planet. That's the baseline. That's the default model. Across the room, Jo sneezed. She said something in her language that the Matrix translated as a mild imprecation, self-directed. She found a cloth in her bag, used it, put it away. She had produced the cloth with the ease of someone doing a thing so routine it required no cognitive attention whatsoever. Varric thought about the sneeze. The sneeze had involved an involuntary, whole-body muscular contraction. The kind of force a Vale body would need to brace for, consciously, to avoid joint damage. Jo had not braced. Her skeleton had simply held. We need to file a reclassification request, Varric said. With what category? Lyra asked. They both looked at the blinking field on the screen. Naturally armored species. Lyra thought about the fall data. The impact resistance. The bone density that had caused a system calibrated across 11,000 species to invent a new category rather than force a misclassification. She thought about the way Jo had crumpled the wrapper. Keep it, she said. Varric, save the file. Jo looked up again. She had that expression humans got. Varric had seen it before, in the cultural briefings, when they sensed they were being observed and couldn't determine why. Everything okay? She called. The Matrix turned it into a polite social inquiry, tone, mild curiosity, no alarm. Fine, Varric said. We are finishing your assessment. Cool, Jo said. She looked back at her device. Anything interesting? Varric and Lyra exchanged a look across the full width of the room. Nothing unusual, Varric said. Jo nodded, satisfied. The screen blinked once. Classification confirmed, naturally armored species.